Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, PSP, let's go! Ah. Oh, hi there guys. In last week's episode 2.5, we tackled solder wick and how to use it to safely remove batteries and old solder joints without explosions on game carts. Feel free to check that one out. Anyway, let's get into this episode. I've been trying to find what I think we're going to need for it, but that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Ah, here it is. What we're going to need is every little bit we can get of this luck. So feel free to join me on episode 3, At Home Do-It-Yourself Modifications, as I pass you over to Jared from Avalanche Reviews on this week's episode theme. Alright, thanks guys, bye.
Hey Jared, I'm also Jared. Jared from Avalanche Reviews to be specific. And I've noticed that one of my favorite RPG powerhouse consoles, the PSP, spends most of its time hooked up to my TV. Now don't get me wrong, I still love the thing, but I tend to play it mostly on my couch, and I just don't have as many chances to game on the go as I used to. My question to you is, can you make my PSP a more permanent fixture in my setup? In other words, can you consolize this bad boy? I assume this is going to test your skills as a modder, but I'm confident that you're more than up to the job. Well, good luck and keep up the awesome work.
So here I have a generic PS2 DualShock 2 controller. 19 individual inputs on this. So for the purpose of education, I'm going to run through what's in this controller. Looking at the plug here, we have a representation I've drawn up. The digital input here is the far left pin. Digital output is the second pin in. 7.5 volts here, the third pin in. Ground, the fourth pin in. VDD, the fifth pin in. CS, yellow, the sixth pin in. CLK, blue, the seventh pin in. The eighth pin is not used, and the ACK green is the ninth pin. So now we're just going to do a breakdown of this controller and I'll be back. First start by removing the 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll take those off and I'll be right back. Okay, let's open this up. As we pull it open, we reveal the 2 off-balance DC motors here, which create your rumble in your controller. The ribbon connecting the 2 analog joysticks, the left and the right trigger, as well as R2 and L2. And here's what we're looking for here. The connection points for your reference, listed just here. Right, this is what we'll use as our reference against the drawing. Okay, I'm going to do some more research and I'll be straight back with some more stuff. What we need to do now is establish a power supply that we're going to use for this unit to hook into the mains and power our PSP home console. What we're going to use, and luckily most of the hard work's already done for us in regards to this part, is the switch mode power supply, the PSP charger itself. Now, it's a pressed unit, so to get into it, it's going to be quite difficult, but at the same time not difficult if you do this. 110 volts or 240, so it can be used anywhere in the world, and it puts out 5 volts DC. What I did already, but worked out how to do this, is you've got to get your side cutters and push here on this corner. And that pressure pops it open, and there you go. That's how you get into it, because you're not going to want to use the box inside. For heat dissipation reasons, you're going to want it to be free. So input voltage here goes through some smoothing, back through here, step down transformer, through some caps again, and then out rectified DC, and then some smoothing here. So very clean power, very easy to use. You'll see more of this as we put it into the unit itself. So now we're at one of the stars of the show, the PlayStation 2, also known as the PS2. This model here is the Slim NTSC from the US. It's a 6th generation console, leading out from the hugely successful PS1. It was released in 2000 in Japan. There's a fatter version of this one. Anyway, this is interesting fact about this, it's the longest active console ever. Right, so the problem with this anyway, so you know, is this laser's kaput, the whole thing's stuffed. So, I'll open it up for you. Now how you get inside is fairly simple. It's these little 6 things pop up. Now I've taken the screws off to speed this up for you already. But there's 6 of them here, right? And there's the 6th one there, sorry. Now, there's normally void tape here if you remove it. That's your warranty seal, but as none of these are in warranty anymore, there's no real concern there. Right, so you lift it here to get it off, and then that end just pops up like that. And that's our lid off. Now first thing we're going to want to get off is this fan, because it's good and we can reuse it if we ever have to on another one, because I'm not one to throw stuff away. So just get that little tab out here and the fan should just lift off. Take this laser driver off, because we've got to gut this system completely. Now there's 4 screws here. I've already removed one of them when I diagnosed this thing. I'll show you exactly what's wrong with it in a minute. But I'll remove these cables here, and there's these little ribbon cables attaching to attachments here. Now this is the power light here. Remove that. We're going to keep this for later, I think. The little battery for keeping the time on the unit. And there's one little last one here connected in now. That's what's wrong with it, is this little ribbon cable here between here and there's stuffed. And it's had a short and it's caused problems further down the line. So, no good. Next thing you want to do is this little screw here to get the shielding and the unit out of the case itself. Take this one out. I'll zoom back out. And you grab from the back and pull up like that. Okay. Now we'll flip this over to remove the RF shielding. And you'll find 1, 2, 3 here. Get your small instrument driver, very small Phillips head or a small flat blade. And just open it up. This shielding should just pull off if you've done it right, which I hope we've done it right. Oh, get it. There we go. Sorry about that. Right. And the bottom one falls off with the heatsink. Now this CPU is dead, so there's no resurrecting it. I'm not a fan of cannibalizing consoles, but what we're going to use is a component video jack here. We're going to put the PSP into it, so this part of the board will be coming out and getting mounted back into this just to fill these ports, but none of these will be active apart from the component. And there'll be a new power jack here from this switch mode power supply from the PSP will be mounted in here. And we'll be taking a section of this board out here for mounting. There's a screw hole here where we're going to put our controllers back in, and there'll be an SD card slot in here instead in the Magic Gate. Alright, so I'll mark everything up and I'll be back in a minute. So what I'm going to do here is harvest the Magic Gate control ports, and where I've got these pink lines is where I'm going to use this Dremel grinder and then here too, and take these sections out. I'll show you what they look like when they're done. The grinding won't be done on film. It's going to take a long time, so what you want to do is basically make sure you catch this hole so that you can use it, and that hole here so that you've got something to mount this little piece of board when you do it inside. And same again for here, you want to make sure this hole stays, and the one here, and you can cut like that. And then you can mount these to the board nice and secure and fill up those ports again. So here's one of our boards that we're going to use. We've got the screw holes here and here to mount it to, and here's our pinouts for the controller and the memory card slot. So we're good to go for that bit. I'll be back once I've cut out the power section. And here's our second board here, so we have a total of 2. There's where we're going to take our component pinouts from, and the power supply is going to swap out for this jack here with the 241, 110 one, and I'm just going to extend it. Okay, I'll be back when they're mounted. What you're seeing right now is the power supply that I'm about to hook up inside the PS2 Slim. Now, just for your reference, the 5V side, you're going to have to cut the end off this cable and strip it down. Now, this here's the white one is the positive, and the black here is the ground. But when we strip it down, you'll see that it's a shield. So twist it into a cable-like form, and we'll put some shrink over this. And the white is our active here. So the next time you see this, we'll be hooking it in. So now what you see here is the controller port physically mounted back in place. Now actually what will happen is these screws here will come from the bottom up and join the case together, but they're just sitting here to hold it in place for show. Now I'll just zoom in. The reason there's a PSP case sitting here is so you can see the physical dimensions, so you know you have enough room left for everything. Now what will happen is obviously the PCBs will be taken apart out of this and then in the next episode and put in place, and they're going to be a fair bit smaller than its actual size, but we know just here looking at it that everything's going to fit, so that's great. So take this out. Now I'll go into depth and explain what's been happening here. Okay, so we've got this piece of panel that you saw me cut out before, right? Now what's here is I've pinned out all of the connecting leads to here for a component video out, and tested them all out and flagged what each one is, like an audio left, audio right, etc. The figure 8 power cable has now been mounted to where the data point used to be, because the feet are actually the same on this, and it sits in place, which is quite nice. So I've removed the RJ45 connection out of there because PSP uses a Wi-Fi, not a physical connection, so there's no need for it there. I've chopped the back of this out a little bit to make it fit, and it all sits in nicely. Now what we've got here is the power supply, right? And we've just soldered onto the other end of this where our cables have got to go onto. Same as before, but what's new is this, the inside of the PSP. Now the reason I'm showing you this now, even though we haven't done a breakdown, is for interfacing and testing. We need to know that this is going to put out the correct voltage on the end and actually power up the PSP. So I'll show you a video of that working, and the next thing we'll get straight into how we're going to do this part. And then that'll be the end of the episode for this one, and we'll hook into the next one next time on the PSP breakdown. And then what we'll do next is bring it all together. I really don't know whether I'm on the edge of disaster here or the edge of success, but there's only really one way to find out, and that's turn the power on. So here goes. my god, it worked. Alright, so our proof of concept worked and powers up okay. So now our next aim of attack is go into the controller side of things. Now what you can see here before we go anywhere is where the old power jack used to be on the PSP power supply, right? So the foot, so you know, the feet spacing is the same for the RJ45 connection there as it is for the power connection. So they're just a straight swap, and that's where the old DC jack was. I've just desoldered it. I'm going to blank that hole out. Now this top section here is going to be getting a 3D printed case with custom UMD drawer and all that sort of stuff for it, right? So we don't worry about physical height with this one, and I'm going to release the specs of the UMD thing when it's all done, right? But anyway, without carrying on too much, we'll turn this over, and what you see where I've marked red is player 1 and player 2 controllers, right? The 9 pins. Now if you backtrack to that mapping I showed you before, shows you the pin outs of this as it corresponds to the plug, right? So we're going to solder the 8 wires off these because one of them's not used, and I'm going to go from there. But I'm assuming with the PSP we may need to put a multiplexer in or some kind of expansion plug, maybe 3D printed, due to the fact that there's extra face buttons on the portable itself. But anyway, I'll get this soldered all up and I'll be back with you. And then another thing too, by the way, actually before I go, is we may utilise these USBs just as utilities, you know. You're using it, you might as well have a few of them using, alright? So yep, I'll be back after we solder this one up. So I'm just soldering in the final one now. What you may or may not know is this is a third arm, and I've been using this in the last episode to show it off. They're very handy for jobs like this where you just need that extra little bit of stability. Oh, but I'll just get this on in place. Nice. Now what you see here is the back of the controller. I'm actually pinned into it. There's 9 wires, but I believe only 8 of them are used, but I've wired all 9 in, so if we need a spare, well, we can pin it right through. The memory cards are on the back here, as I said before, but what you want to do is we're going to utilise it on this side just to avoid congestion. Now I will run an insulating resin behind this, but it is key that you try and pin these and solder the sheath right up to the solder if you can. So that requires you to be quite quick with a lower heat, because you don't want to have that potential of shorting, where you can see here it's only a small space between point A and point B. May or may not do anything now because they're not actually physically connected to anything, but you just don't want things going where they shouldn't go. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get this wiring pinned into a PlayStation 2 controller, and I'll meter them all out and make sure that we've got all our continuity across all of them. And I'll be back with you in a minute.
Hey guys, Jared from Avalanche Reviews here. If you're looking to have your retro game modification questions answered right here on an episode of Retro Revolutions, and you want to get that exact mod sent to you, email Jared at retrorevolutionsdesigns@gmail.com to be part of an episode just like this.